Come, let us feel energy move in only 5 minutes. For meditation, mudras are useful for deep practice. In The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars Episode 5, Yoda explains, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. So that's a deliciously, let's see, figurative way of saying two things, that everything is temporary and therefore as non-graspable as a beam of light, but also that in addition to having forms and in addition to having minds, our bodies generate electromagnetic fields, and as such, our bodies are affected by electromagnetic fields. There's a laboratory test where you take someone who is able-bodied and nimble of mind, and you expose them to a electromagnetic wand of sufficient intensity, and they momentarily lose their ability to speak. It isn't a psychological situation, it's a problem. It's an electromagnetic phenomena creating psychological symptoms. For instance, if you go to if you have the misfortune to be injured and go to the physical therapist, they have a microwave machine wherein people place wands on tense muscles, and it cooks you simply through and causing the strands of the muscle to relax simply by using the microwave spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is fascinating and quite effective. It's one of my favorite therapies to receive. As someone who endures multiple chronic illnesses stemming from fetal alcohol syndrome, autism, ADHD, and literally all the comorbidities, I have spent my life appealing to medicine for help, and then when it failed me, looking towards everything from that which was mere quackery to that which actually worked. And along my journey, I stumbled upon the practices of energy work. Like many autistics, I am very perceptive to subtle phenomena. Many autistics can hear electricity in the walls. So I took to energy work like a fish to water. And although I found it useful, I did not find it to be a panacea. So it's easy to become superstitious when we can direct feelings of warmth or cold or tinglies or pressure or lightness to various parts of the body. It doesn't mean we're a Buddha. It doesn't mean we're a Jedi Knight. It just means we're getting relatively good at manipulating our own electromagnetic fields. Some of these manipulations can be inert, some can be beneficial, some can be harmful. I am reminded of the advice of Albert Einstein, who quipped that any educated idiot can make things more difficult, more complicated, more violent, but that it takes a lot of courage and a little bit of genius to move in the opposite direction. I've said that to say this. There are many energy work systems in the secular world and the religious world. There are many secular energy systems in the West and the Kabbalah, the various Kabbalistic traditions, and there are many energy systems in the East, in the Neo-Taoist traditions and the Neo-Hindu traditions and the Neo-Buddhist traditions. I've had the good fortune to study them all. I'm rather fond of a trend I noticed in Buddhism to simplify that which is complicated. Consider, if you will, Sturgeon's law, which reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, but not in the fun, tingly way. Those who follow the path of the 10% pursue mechanisms that reinforce our abilities, our tendencies to be flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. Sadly, 90% of humanity is very enthusiastic to embrace techniques to trigger our tendencies to be the opposite, to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. And yet, when we look at the attitudes of the 10%, let me go back. When we look at the attitudes of the 90%, we are told things like anything worthwhile is difficult and takes a long time, which is excellent if you are elitist and want to subjugate others. However, whether the Buddha was real or whether the Buddha was archetypical, there is an ancient text attributed to him. It is called the Discourse on the Four Bases of Mindfulness. If you prefer Pali, that would be the Satipatthana Sutta. In the second to the final passage, we read that one could master his path in as little as 7 days. Now, whether the Buddha was real or imagined has no bearing on the fact that that idea is distinctly yin, it's distinctly matriarchal, it's distinctly egalitarian. In light of that, it makes perfect sense to be drawn towards systems that are easy and accessible. For instance, in the Neo-Taoist system, there are many energy centers that are relatively superficial and near the surface of our skin throughout various meridians, governing channels, and consumption channels. There are others as well, but those are the major ones. And acupuncture students have to memorize all of them, which is just a work of Herculean effort. In the most popular Hindu tradition, there are 7 psychic centers. In the most popular Buddhist tradition, there are 5 psychic centers. And of those 5, the majority of, well, not the majority, but a significant number of Buddhist luminaries focus merely on 2. The foolish focus upon them superstitiously, thinking that energy collecting in one place can make us a Buddha and energy collecting in another place can make us a villain. And although energy collecting in some places can make us cranky and can make us anxious, I take a distinctly pragmatic view. As one who is differently abled, I work with energy simply to help my body to muster the strength to sit in meditation in a sustainable way. So what I'd like to do, let me go over here real quick. Okay, so what I'd like to do is demonstrate two psychic centers and effortless mechanisms that we can use to access them. This is the Dzogchen Sunday Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For multiple decades, I have spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that you would not have to. It is Obi-Wan Kenobi early Wednesday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi. We're going, the first of two, so these are the 5 psychic centers of which I mentioned. We're only going to focus on 2 of them. We're going to begin with the uppermost, which some people describe as the crown chakra, or the body wheel. I like to describe, so the easiest way for us to access it is to work with the color white, work with the verb watch, and work with the following gesture. And this gesture is as simple as using the tip of our left index finger to support the lower knuckle of our right index finger, palms up in our lap. This mudra or gesture is very, very useful. It's useful for gently inviting our real or imagined subtle energies to coalesce at our crown. It is useful for us to, when we find ourselves on the very precipice of a meltdown. It is useful every evening when we lie down to fall asleep. And it is useful when eventually death comes for us. It is useful to help us depart in a genuinely peaceful manner, which is the best way to go. Additionally, it is useful to help us count our solitary, our first of 13 solitary recitations. What does that mean? What is a recitation? What are we reciting? Okay, simple. Every time we passively notice air enter our nostrils, not actively concentrate, just passively notice, we silently and mentally recite the verb watch. Every time we passively notice air exit our nostrils, we silently and mentally recite the verb rest. These two together are described as a round. So the first time we silently and mentally recite it, we are counting it or keeping track of it by using this mudra. Let us do this together right now. That was about a second. Didn't take very long. Well, not, it was just a fraction of a minute. Let's say that. To get closer to a minute, let's practice it a dozen more times. Now, how are we going to keep track of a dozen repetitions? We begin by bringing our attention to our right hand. Every time we silently and mentally recite the verb watch during our inhalations, we're going to advance our thumb, beginning with the right little fingers, lower set of creases, and concluding with the right index fingers, higher set of creases. So let us practice this together as a team right now. So the solitary repetition plus the dozen repetitions gives us a baker's dozen, or 13 repetitions, which take just a little bit more than a minute. If we count an additional, so if we count 12 more solitary repetitions and 12 more dozen repetitions, that'll take us approximately 14 minutes, which is a useful way of timing our meditation. So to keep track of our next solitary repetition, we turn our attention to our left hand, touch the tip of our left thumb to the lower set of creases upon our left little finger. We perform our solitary recitation of watch rest. We now gather the dozen repetitions on our right hand, just like before. Now, assuming your hands are overhead, very soon you'll feel at least something going on at the top of your scalp. The intensity of what we feel is not a barometer of our spirituality. It's just a barometer of our sensitivity, which sometimes is useful and sometimes is not useful. So our quest is not to feel something. Our quest is to watch and rest in harmony with our breathing while learning this method that helps us keep track, that we might harness our neurotic tendencies before they get the best of us. To keep track of our next solitary repetition, we return to our left hand and advance our left thumb. So then now that you know how to count multiple solitary repetitions and multiple dozen repetitions, let us return our hands palms up to our lap. If this seems overwhelming, allow me to reassure you that repetition is the mother of skill. Simply by coming to these live streams once every 12 hours or so, whether you attend live or whether you attend a replay, can help us to master this entire system that I'm teaching you in as little as a week or so. Mastering this system does not mean we no longer feel certain emotions. It means we are no longer enslaved by certain emotions, and there's a great difference. It means we still have a survival mechanism. It is just not our default mechanism. For when it is our default mechanism, our lives can be nasty, brutish, and short. And an example of this would be the plight of the typical billionaire. Most billionaires, while being very powerful, are not very happy. It's because they've spent their lives indulging their survival-oriented tendencies towards competition and cruelty. Whereas happiness, a happy life, is one described by kindness and cooperation. Different neurological mechanisms. And it's easy to feel very bad for these billionaires. It'd be easier if they weren't harming so many people. Let's continue. The moment you have a specific question about the philosophies or techniques that support meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about every 14 minutes or so. Since we are working with the meditation gesture, it may be appropriate for us to take a deeper look at meditation through the lens of neuroscience. When we receive the very bad advice to actively focus to an excessive degree, we wind up so exhausting our medial prefrontal cortex that we trigger our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression. However, when we take a relaxing break from the exhausting habit of competing against our own autonomic nervous system and instead passively cooperate with it, not only do we wind up inadvertently calming the anxiety and aggression of our amygdala, we wind up spontaneously stimulating our anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy. Let's proceed by exploring one of these two facets of our autonomic nervous system. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we have evolved to automatically access both the tippy top and the very bottom of our spinal cord. These two regions, functioning as a team, working as a team, function as the core, the parasympathetic aspect of our autonomic nervous system, and has evolved to help us to rest to such a degree during our exhalation that which we watched during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel a trifle less stressful, a trifle less permanent, a trifle less defining, and a trifle and as non-graspable as a vast empty void. It would seem that a simile is only as effective as it is relatable. We therefore must ask, what is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn? For although it is tantalizing to the eye, it is non-graspable to the hand. And it would seem that whether we're using the figures, the words not self or emptiness, these are just figures of speech to describe that which is latent within each exhalation. Now, does that mean we need to practice sitting and breathing and watching and resting 24/7? No. Just practicing for as much as your body can tolerate, approximately once every 12 hours, is enough. Do we play with the verb rest in order to coerce our parasympathetic nervous system to cause our mind and body to relax? No. Our parasympathetic nervous system does not need to be told that. It's always striving to do that during each exhalation, like an app on our smartphone running quietly in the background. No. The reason we play with the verb rest is to remind our will, our volition, our intention to take a relaxing break from the exhausting habit of actively competing against our own autonomic nervous system. For the most efficient way to use all the regions of our central nervous system in the most sustainable way is for us to cooperate with the conductor that is our autonomic nervous system. One of the differences between a freshly minted PhD and a Nobel laureate is their ability to use their intellect as well as their creativity. Perhaps that is why Albert Einstein insisted that creativity was intelligence at play. But beware, my friends, of thought-stopping cliches that are popular with culty organizations and those who wish to manipulate us. Belief is not a substitute for perception, emotion, intention, thought, memory, or imagining. In fact, it's often a hindrance. For what is belief other than a rigidity, a grasping of attitude and emotion, when experience tells us that that rigidity is of yang and flexibility is of yin. Rigidity is of religious patriarchy and flexibility is of spiritual matriarchy. I recommend choosing the second, not the first. Let's continue. Having completed approximately 14 minutes of practice, we are faced with a question. Do we get up and carry on with our day, or do we meditate for an additional 14 minutes? If we decide to meditate for an additional 14 minutes, then we're faced with a question. How do we gather a second collection of 13 solitary repetitions and 13 dozen repetitions? The answer is as simple as returning to our meditation gesture. We simply slide the tip of our left index finger along the back of our right index finger till we come to that right index finger's middle knuckle. And we then proceed with almost exactly as we did before. Some people have been taught that they must actively contemplate or they will not acquire wisdom. But a careful study of the Buddha's original teachings makes it very clear that the essence of this so-called wisdom is the wisdom of stress, the wisdom of change, the wisdom of not self, and the wisdom of emptiness. We are wired to perceive stress. We don't need to hunt for it. It kicks down the door and eats our supper. We can't help but notice stress, whether that stress be circumstantial or physical or interpersonal or mental. We are wired to perceive stressors. It is part of our survival mechanism. For we cannot respond to a stressor if we do not perceive it or recognize it. So that takes care of itself through the simple act of involuntarily noticing, whether we want to or not, during each inhalation. We cannot help but notice change as we exhale and relax. Whether we want to or not, we are assailed with recollections and imaginings and perceptions of change. We reviewed a few moments ago that no self is just a metaphor for no longer identifying or being defined by that which we notice. It's a visceral experience latent within each exhalation. It does not have to be forced. It does not have to be theorized. The same thing with emptiness. Emptiness is just a metaphor for the experience latent within each relaxing exhalation. These things do not have to be formed. It is the lies of patriarchy, the lies of our rigid and controlling tendencies that make us think we need to squander decades and study. We don't. Meditation is easy. It can be mastered in as little as a week. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden politicians start behaving themselves and disabilities evaporate and the people in our life miraculously pull their heads out of the warm, dark, smelly places they've been keeping them. It does mean, though, that we're so good at working with the Buddha's techniques that we're able to do so spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. Just the way we mastered brushing our teeth, tying our shoes, riding a bike, reading, writing, and arithmetic. I'd like to take a moment to dispel figures of speech that, when taken literally, are rather befuddling. In the Chinese tradition, we hear the phrase, no thought. When taken literally, it sounds like we're told to repress our thoughts, which is dangerous. But when taken figuratively, it means something completely different. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever thoughts we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could feel as fleeting, non-defining, and non-graspable as if they were not even there. That's all. It's a figure of speech. Having gathered our second collection of 13 solitary and 13 dozen recitations of watch and rest, we are faced with a choice. Do we count a third collection by sliding the tip of our left index finger to the higher knuckle of our right index finger, or do we energetically shift gears? We shift gears by changing colors from white to teal. We shift gears by changing verbs from watch to feel, even though we use feel and watch figuratively and not literally. We shift gears by switching from our crown chakra, from gathering energy at our crown to gathering energy in our chest. We switch gears by switching from the Pasadi Mudra to the Sati Mudra, which could be described as the mindfulness gesture. Doing so is a study in simplicity. All we got to do is use the tip of our left middle finger to support the great knuckle at the base of our right middle finger, palms up in our lap. As we passively notice our chest swell with breath during our inhalation, we can silently and mentally recite the verb feel. And as we passively notice our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale, we can silently and mentally recite the verb rest. Having completed one repetition, we now begin collecting our a dozen repetitions on our right hand. We keep track of our next solitary repetition by touching the tip of our left thumb to the lower set of creases of our left little finger. And now we count an additional dozen repetitions of feel rest. We now advance our left thumb to the next set of creases. The practice of feel rest is ideal it's an ideal contemplative strategy when next we give or receive sexual favors. Give, receive, or share sexual favors, and arguably is the essence of sexual tantra or karma mudra. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. For Meditate Like a Jedi is made possible thanks to the generosity of viewers just like you. In approximately 10 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's dusk practice of Meditate Like a Jedi. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.